Let's dive right into this explainer because today we're unpacking a fascinating tension that you'll find in literally every boardroom, school, and startup out there. On one side, you have the rigid, structured methodology of innovation, and on the other, the incredibly messy, unpredictable reality of human behavior. What we're doing today is bringing these two powerful worlds together to build a blueprint for making innovation actually stick. We're going to merge the mechanical steps of human-centered design with the timeless character principles of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
So here's a question. Why do so many seemingly brilliant new ideas completely fail? I mean, we've all seen it happen, right? Imagine a tech company pouring millions of dollars and years of engineering into this cutting-edge app, only to release it to absolute silence because, well, it doesn't actually solve a real problem for anyone. Or think about a well-funded community program that nobody actually attends. These solutions crash upon contact with the real world because we obsess entirely over the mechanics of the solution while completely ignoring the human element and the mindset required to sustain it.
You can really think of this dynamic like a massive iceberg. Human-centered design, or HCD, provides the visible tactics above the surface. It's the practical, repeatable tool we use to innovate. But Stephen Covey's interpersonal habits, they provide that vital character base below the freezing water. And the sheer mass of that underwater character base is literally what determines if the iceberg stays afloat or if it just rolls over and sinks. You simply cannot design a truly human-centric solution if you lack that underlying mindset of empathy, cooperation, and renewal. You absolutely need both.
Here's our roadmap for today. First up, 2 frameworks, 1 goal. Second, empathize, seek to understand. Third, define and ideate, synergize. Fourth, prototype and test. And finally, sustain, sharpen the saw. This is going to map a proven design process directly onto Covey's habits.
Section 1. 2 frameworks, 1 goal. Solving real-world challenges. To really ground this whole process, we're going to follow an amazing real-world example from our source material. We'll track a leadership program designed for technical and vocational education, or TVET principles, over in Kenya. These leaders faced a massive, urgent challenge. Their schools were drastically underfunded. They needed to immediately design income-generating activities just to keep their doors open. But crucially, these new businesses had to actually resonate and work within their local communities.
To tackle this crisis, the program utilized the 5 chronological steps of human-centered design: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. But rather than just handing them some sterile corporate playbook, the program showed them how Covey's habits actually act as the psychological engine driving every single one of these mechanical stages. We're going to focus specifically on how these core HCD steps map perfectly onto Covey's habits 4 through 7, turning a rigid framework into a living, breathing process.
Section 2. Empathize. Seek to understand. Now, this very first step is where traditional isolated problem-solving usually gets it entirely wrong.
Amateurs almost always start by talking. They rush into a room and aggressively pitch their own brilliant idea without ever pausing to listen. It's kind of like designing a state-of-the-art, diamond-encrusted doghouse for someone who only owns a goldfish. It's completely tone-deaf. Covey's habit here is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Think of a doctor. Imagine walking into a clinic and before you even open your mouth, the doctor just shoves a bottle of heavy prescription pills into your hand. You'd walk right out. If you don't thoroughly diagnose the problem first, you can't prescribe a solution. The exact same logic applies to product design.
In Kenya, the principals didn't just sit in an office and guess what their communities needed. They actually went out and conducted structured empathy interviews with staff, students, and local employers. They mapped out exactly what these folks explicitly said, what they thought, their actual behaviors, and their core emotions. By capturing these 4 dimensions, they were actively practicing habit 4, think, win, win. Because let's be real, you simply cannot create a mutually beneficial win if you haven't done the deep empathy work to uncover what a win actually looks like for the other side.
Moving on to Section 3, define and ideate. Synergize. Once we've gathered all those deep, messy, emotional insights, we have to transition from collecting raw data to structured synthesis.
This is where we distill what we've learned and start brainstorming, which brings us directly into the territory of Habit 6, synergy. Synergy is the principle that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, that 1 + 1 = 3 or more. But here's the kicker. Synergy isn't just about people holding hands and being polite. It involves real friction. In nature, if you plant 2 different plants close together, their roots are going to commingle, fight for space, and ultimately improve the soil quality for both.
In design, when you blend radically different perspectives together, that hard work of creative cooperation dramatically outperforms any individual effort.
And this leads directly to the ultimate goal of ideation. We aren't looking for a win-lose scenario where one side gets their way. And actually, we aren't even looking for a compromise where everyone just gives up a little bit of what they want to reach some mediocre middle ground. No, we're using synergy to find a third alternative. A third alternative is a massive leap in innovation. It's a completely new, vastly superior solution that simply did not exist before those diverse minds started collaborating. It's a real game changer.
So how does this build practically? Well, you can't just throw people in a room and demand they synergize. You need structure. The Kenyon principles started by pooling their interview data, clustered those insights into a clear problem statement, and then converted that statement into a how might we question. Why is that specific phrasing so incredibly powerful? Because asking something like, how might we utilize our welding workshop after hours to serve local farmers, completely removes the pressure of having an immediate answer. It opens up the floor for wildly creative brainstorming.
Section 4. Prototype and test. With a synergistic idea in hand, you still have to find out if it actually works in the real world before you spend a fortune on it.
A lot of great ideas die here, just from a fear of failure. But instead of wasting months building a massive, rigid, 60-page business plan that no one will ever read, the Tibet principles stayed agile. They mapped their ideas onto this simple, one-page lean canvas. What exactly is the offer? Who's paying for it? What assets are we using? And what are the immediate risks? This is a true prototype. It gets the idea out of your head and into the real world with incredible speed, so it can be scrutinized.
Next, they tested these paper prototypes using rapid, 3-minute speed dating peer pitches. The vital lesson here is the intense vulnerability required to test an idea. Bringing a third alternative to life demands courageous, immediate feedback. It requires that strong, internal character base we talked about earlier to put your ego completely aside, present your prototype, and calmly let others poke holes in it without getting defensive.
Section 5. Sustain. Sharpen the saw. This right here is the critical juncture where so many seemingly successful initiatives eventually go to die.
You can design the most perfect, user-tested solution in the world, but if the people running it burn out, the innovation perishes. This brings us to Covey's Habit 7, sharpening the saw. Imagine spending all your time frantically sawing down a tree, but refusing to ever stop and sharpen the blade. Eventually, you're going to exhaust yourself and fail. You have to take the time to preserve and enhance your greatest asset through 4 dimensions of self-renewal: the physical, the mental, the social or emotional, and the spiritual.
What is truly remarkable about this framework is how it scales a deeply personal habit into a comprehensive institutional sustainability plan. For those Kenyan schools to keep their newly designed businesses alive, they assigned owners to all 4 dimensions. Someone maintained the physical equipment. Someone else drove mental renewal through ongoing staff training. Another team cultivated social relationships with the community. And perhaps most uniquely, someone was tasked with spiritual renewal, ensuring the new business remained tightly aligned with the school's core purpose. That is how an idea actually survives its initial launch.
I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge today. Look at the projects you're working on right now. Are they struggling because you're relying entirely on the mechanical tools of design while completely ignoring the human character required to sustain them? A good tool is never enough on its own. You absolutely must apply the methodology of human-centered design alongside the mindset of the 7 habits. You have to seek to understand before you prescribe, embrace friction to build synergy, and continually sharpen the saw. So with that in mind, how are you going to design your next solution?